Welcome to Hour 2 of the Midwest #1 weekly motorsports show, Track Talk, on the RacinBoys Broadcasting Network. Brought to you by McCarthy Chevrolet. Once again, here's Scott Traylor and Kirk Elliott.
And welcome back. Hour number 2 here of Track Talk, brought to you by McCarthy Chevrolet. We got a jam-packed hour for you. We're going to be talking with 5 of the living members of the 2012 class of the C.A.R.B Hall of Fame this hour. And they are Dale Roper, Dennis Melvin, Bill Oots, Rick Darling, and Jay Lyle. And Bud Honeycutt will be here. He's author of Up on the Wheel and a C.A.R.B Hall of Famer himself. We'll talk about 2 of the deceased members of the Hall of Fame, Jim McMurray and Wes Farron. Of course, Ricky Weld is the other new member of the C.A.R.B Hall of Fame that'll be inducted at the ceremony that'll start at 4 o'clock this afternoon at the Gladstone Community Center. Hope to see you up there. Well, we didn't talk about in the last hour some of the other racing events that are going on this weekend. The Mars Racing Series opened up its 2012 campaign last night down at Clarksville Speedway in Tennessee, and it's hard to believe they got it in with all the tornadoes and nasty weather that has been going on around that part of the world, but they were able to get the show in. It's called the Tuckasee Toilet Bowl, and Tony Jackson Jr. won the first race of the season, and they'll finish up that weekend of racing tonight. And the Texas World Dirt Track Championships are going on down at the Texas Motor Speedway Dirt Track. Kelly Shryock was among the top qualifiers in modified action, and that event will be winding up this weekend. When we come back, we're going to get right into the interviews. Dale Roper will be first up when we come back. And again, Track Talk brought to you by McCarthy Chevrolet. We're coming right back.
You know it's a new Corvette as it starts. Though you can't see it. Your dad had a Chevy. His dad, his brother had a Charger, but it was a Hemi, so that made it all right. His granddad used to take on Cadillac V8s with his new 265 overhead valve 56 Chevy. Racing is part of it. Hell, it is life. Plenty of left turns have been made under a banner that says McCarthy Chevy runs deep. Take a look at the car in front of you right now. Odds are it says McCarthy on the backside. They knew about the McCarthy low price guarantee. $10,000 if they can't beat a bona fide signed offer from a local franchise dealer on in-stock vehicles. That's right, 10 grand says McCarthy has the lowest price in Kansas City on any Silverado in stock, or Malibu, or Traverse, Equinox, or Cruise. Good people go through difficult times. All credit applications are accepted. Yeah, a Corvette. Sweet. McCarthy Chevrolet. I-35 in Santa Fe and Olathe.
Welcome back. Good Saturday morning to you. Scott is covering the Lucas Oil ASCS Sprint Car Dirt Series event down at Canyon Speedway Park this weekend. You can hear it live tonight at 8 o'clock, and that means he'll not be able to be with us at the C.A.R.B Hall of Fame induction ceremony. That'll be going on at the Gladstone Community Center a little bit later on, beginning at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Looking forward to that. And here in this hour, we're going to be talking with all of the new inductees into the Hall of Fame. And we're going to start off with Dale Roper, who spent a lot of time racing here in the Kansas City area, most notably at I-70 Speedway, where he won a lot of races in his pavement-modified car. Of course, he had experience on both pavement and dirt. Dale joining us from his home in Fairgrove, Missouri, getting ready for tonight's banquet. Dale, good morning. And what's it mean to you to be a new member of the C.A.R.B Hall of Fame?
Well, it was a surprise, and it's an honor. I know at one time Scott had mentioned something to me about that. I really didn't think it would ever happen, probably, but it is an honor to go into something like that. I've been in our little deal down here, the little Ozarks Hall of Fame. I've done that, but it is an honor and to kind of get out of my area here a little bit,
Well, you spent a lot of time here in the Kansas City area. You raced out at I-70 Speedway. Just how special was it for you to race at a track like I-70 Speedway on a regular basis?
Well, I ran there off and on from the time that thing was originally built. Not very often. I'd run maybe once a year or maybe skip some years. But then in 99 and 2000 and 2001, those 3 years, we ran every race at I-70. We never missed a race. And that was three of the I've had a lot of good years and a lot of fun racing all over the country, but that was probably the most enjoyable. I really enjoyed running there. I liked the people there, and they all always treated me real nice, all the officials and the other fellow drivers. I got along with everybody real well, never had any problem with anybody, and it was it was a lot of fun running up there. That track was a fun track to run on. I've told other people that when you come up here, you kind of got to work up to this thing. You know, first time out, it's a little bit intimidating, but once you run on it a little bit, well, you kind of get used to it, and I really liked it. You could really race on it, a lot of room, and I liked it. And I was fortunate those 3 years I had a good car. I had probably as good a car as anybody else, and that makes a difference. If you're competitive when you unload, that makes it more fun.
You raced not just only pavement, but you raced a lot of dirt too. Talk about the differences between racing on asphalt and dirt, and which part of racing those two did you like the best?
Oh, I like both of them. I actually probably, from start to finish, I never figured it out, evaluated the difference, how much, but I probably ran as much dirt as I did pavement. The difference was, I guess in 1989 or 90, they paved these two tracks down here in 89, and I think I only ran a dirt show maybe a couple of times after 89, and from 90 on, all through the 90s and up until 2002, when that was really my last year running a full schedule, I didn't run anything but pavement. I ran a pitman's race at a dirt track one time, I think, but I was mainly on pavement the last 12 years that I raced. But I ran a lot of dirt in the late 60s and 70s and mid 80s, a lot of dirt. I like them both. I started out on pavement, and I guess it was kind of my favorite. Pavement, I favored it a little bit, although I've had a lot of fun running on dirt too.
Your family huge into racing. Of course, we remember your brother Dean, and of course your nephew Tony. But also Donnie McCarthy was such an influence. Talk about your family and also Donnie McCarthy, who's such a big part of your racing career.
Well, of course, Dean started racing too. Even though he's 2 years younger than me, he started racing a few years before I did. I didn't start racing until I was 27 or 8 years old, and he started when he was 20. And then Tony started racing, after he raced go-karts, he started racing cars in 86, I guess it was. He ran out of my shop for a couple of years until Dean got a new shop built. And then my son started racing. My boy raced in the 60s and a little bit in the 80s, a few times, a little bit in the 80s. Then he got out for a while, and then he got back in about 10 years. Well, in 2002, I guess, he started running again. He's running full-time at Lebanon in a late model. He owns a sportsman car that he has another boy, Rick Sharp, that's helped me for years, drives it for him, and he runs a late model that some other people own. And he finished third last year, first year in a late model, which he won a couple, and I would have been happy to win one. The competition was pretty tough. They don't have huge field of cars there, but they've got about 15 or 16 good ones, and to win two first year in a late model, I thought was a pretty good year. And of course, and Donnie. Now with Donnie, I'd raced against Donnie competed against him when he had different drivers for him, and I'd actually made a decision I was going to retire from my job in '98, and he came to me in I guess in the fall of '97, and he had been running a late model in ArtGo. And he told me, he said, I've decided I'm going to go back and run a modified, and it depends on if you'll drive it for me. And I said, well, there's a lot of young guys out there who want to drive, and I've kind of had a big retirement party.
Yeah.
I'd kind of look like pretty goofy doing that. And he said, people do that all the time. And I went to Atlanta to a race, and I come back from a NASCAR race, and he called me up, and I went down to see him, and we made the deal, and I drove for him then for 5 years. And he was ready to go for another year. We was running in 2002 when he passed away at the racetrack right after our race was over. And he had already had talked to Fred up there in Kansas City. Was going to build a new car. We had two, and he was going to sell one and keep the one I was driving and have one new one. And so we'd have a spare car. And that ended that, of course, whenever. And that's pretty much. And then they ended up putting dirt on those on the Bolivar and Lebanon tracks. And then, of course, I don't know how long I-70 ran after that, but we would have been back up there in 2003 if he hadn't passed away.
You raced against Carl Edwards and Clint Boyer and Jamie McMurray, and you're friends of all of these guys, but you raced against them. Talk about the memorable race at Moberly where you were up against Carl and Clint. I think, what was that, about 2000? Talk about that day.
Yeah, I think it's about 2000, and I'll have to say that I had a good car and run a lot of pavement, and Carl had a good car, and Clint was in.
He was in Scott's car, I think, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was in Scott's car, and it was really a good car. And I think I laughed about this. So Scott talked to me about this later. When we went out to practice, I never did really tear a bone out practicing. I just wanted to see it, and wasn't nothing going to fall out, and everything felt all right. And I think Clint turned to Scott, and he said, "Well, he doesn't look very fast." And of course, I had won a few races at I-70, some 100-lappers, and won some 25, 30-lappers too. But anyway, Scott said, "Well, you don't need to worry. He'll be fast enough when it comes time to go." And the way it worked out, I think we qualified out of heat races. I think we didn't time trial, but anyway, I think Clint started on the first row, and I started on about the second row, and Carl started on the third, and we started catching lap cars in about 15 laps. Now, I'll give Clint his due. He really hadn't run a whole lot of asphalt, and he had never been on that track, and I don't think he drove a modified on asphalt much at all. We come up on a lap car down the backstretch, and I thought, he'll hesitate for a minute, and I went to the outside. They were about the middle of the track. I kind of went to the outside, and I didn't think there was anywhere anybody could get on the bottom below him. Carl went below, come about two wheels on the grass, I guess, and slid out in front. We both come together in a turn about the same time. He slid out in front of me, and that's the way we finished. Carl won, I was second, Clint was third. So that was my one experience with those. But I ran with Carl a lot at Lebanon. He ran Baby Grands at Lebanon, and whenever they had a Baby Grand show, they probably ran 10 or 12 shows that year, and whenever they ran a Baby Grand show, he had access to a modified, and it happened to be Tony Roper's old modified that he ran in 90, and it was a good car, but it wasn't near as good as mine. And Carl never did finish ahead of me at Lebanon, but I've talked to him about that, and he's talked to me about it, and I said, well, I had a better car than you had. That's the reason mainly. But I ran with Jamie a lot. In fact, the first time that Jamie ever drove a full-size car out of a go-kart was he bought one of my old cars, and he went to Florida with me, Lake City, Florida. It's the first time he'd ever drove in a full-size car. And he was in one of my old cars. But I ran with him a lot. Ran with Jamie a lot. I run with Schrader some. Ran with Rusty quite a little bit in the 70s. When he was coming to Springfield and Fort Smith and Rollin running. I ran with him. Ran with Mark Martin a lot, too. When Mark was about 17 or 18, and I was in my 30s, late 30s, I ran with him a lot. Beat him once at West Plains on dirt.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's
probably the only time.
A lot of great memories. You still stay involved in racing? You go out and still help spot for people?
Yeah, we've got 3 cars actually at our shop, 2 late models, and that sportsman car. In fact, Dale Jr., he put the motor in the sportsman car just today. They set the motor in it, and I think they've got, how many days do you start? About 45 days till they practice. So they've got the late model almost ready, and we've got Jeff Clem's old car. You remember that car, that white car that Jeff Clem had?
Yes.
We've got it. We kind of used it for a backup, and sometimes we run them both. We've had a kid down here that's a pretty good dirt chauffeur. He drove it 2 or 3 times last year. Eric Turner drove it, and But we just ran it probably half a dozen times last year. We didn't really do anything to it. We just bought it and raced it, The car that my boy drives, I think it's a, what year model? 2000. It's a 2008. And Jeff's is a 98. They're 10 years apart, but they're still a lot alike, They're not that much. They're both left-handers. We call them the black car and the white car. The black car's got a crate motor, and white car's got a rules motor. But yeah, I stay involved that way. I spot for my son when he runs, and I drove the white car a couple of times, and I drove a modified once last year. This guy had a modified. He wasn't racing it, and he was wanting to sell it, and he asked me if I'd take it out and just kind of test drive it a little. I didn't really race it very hard. I just kind of tested it. It had a seat in it for a guy who weighed about 300 pounds. That didn't fit me very well, but I tested it for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had a lot of, I've never figured up. I've run on probably in my career. Gosh, I've run in probably 18, 19 states, I guess, and I don't know how many different tracks I've run at. I never did figure them all up, but I run at a lot of them.
You've been everywhere. What is there one big win that is the biggest of your career that you can pinpoint?
Well, I would have to say I've got a picture, and I talked to Terry Watman last week. I've got a picture, and I told him I'd make a copy, bring it to him, because he's in the picture, and it was a race at I-70. And what was, I guess, significant to that race to me was it was in September of 2001, and it was about 2 weeks after my brother passed away in DuQuoin, Illinois, and that was a pretty emotional win for me. I said when they talked to me down on the track, well, I hope there was two old boys up there looking down and enjoyed that as much as I did.
Well, and it's certainly going to be a big night tonight up at the C.A.R.B banquet, and we appreciate you joining us. Congratulations on being one of the latest members of the C.A.R.B Hall of Fame, and look forward to seeing you tonight up at the Gladstone Community Center.
I'll be there, and thanks for having me on.